On December 14th, 8 editors of the National Lampoon met behind closed doors to discuss this nation's most recent crisis, the impending humor shortage. You are about to hear the actual voices of George W. S. Trow, Henry Beard, Jerry Sussman, Michael O'Donoghue, Ann Dietz, Douglas Kenney, Sean Kelly, and Brian McConaughey as they probe the uncertain future of humor in America.
This is going to be a little serious tonight, and it's going to be serious for a couple of reasons. This is the first time any of us in this group have really come face to face with the humor shortage. There is a humor shortage in this country, and we're going to have to deal with it sometime, and this is Henry Beard, who doesn't normally appear on this program. Henry's the editor of the Lampoon, and I think Henry feels that it's important to talk really to our constituency, the people who count on us for delivering humor to their homes week after week, month after month. And I'm going to be putting some fairly hard questions to Henry, and I think Henry is going to be giving some fairly hard answers back. Henry, what is the humor situation? Are we going to be running up against this kind of humor gap?
I don't think we should kid ourselves on this. We have a serious gap. We've seen this coming. We're going to be accused, I'm sure, of a lack of planning about this. People will say that we should have known that we were running out of humor, that we should have had a stockpile. Frankly, it was not possible to plan ahead like this. The speed at which our human resources have been used has been incredible. Obviously, the people of this country have a voracious appetite for humor. We have a tradition in this country, the American sense of humor. People just don't want to cut down on it. The whole idea of rationing. I'm sure you remember in World War II when humor was rationed, when jokes were sent, jokes against Hitler and jokes against Tojo, all jokes were for our boys. There was a lot of annoyance, a lot of bad feeling, a lot of cheating. There was a black market in humor, the joke market. I'm sure you remember that.
What are the figures, Henry? I've heard, the United States is what, an eighth of the world's population? How much of the world's humor do we consume?
We consume 61% of the world's humor and produce
right?
Somewhat less than 9%.
So we've been in a humor deficit situation
since 1948.
I see. Well, now I know traditionally we got, for instance, the turn of the century, we were getting a lot of humor from Ireland.
Yeah, Ireland and France. We got a lot from France.
And what's happened to those? What's happened to them? The Mick jokes and the
well, frankly, George, we've had a problem since the turn of the century. Now let's just go down the list and see what some of the big humor sources were around the turn of the century and see what's become of them. The Chinese. We got an enormous amount of humor from the Chinese. Nobody's laughing at the Chinese anymore. They have an atom bomb. Your average Chinaman is not a source of humor. Now, we would get humor from the French people. We still get some humor from the French people, but you can't laugh at them.
What about cripples? Now, Mike, I know that you still get a chuckle or two out of cripples.
I still find cripples amusing, but I can remember when Pat and Mike jokes were as common as, gravel or whatever is common. And now there are no
gravel shortage, Mike.
There are no more Pat and Mike. What has happened to them?
For their population, the Jews were a wonderful source of humor, even though they were not one of the world's largest ethnic groups. The quality of the humor was very high.
Well, you people use up humor quite a bit, though, Jerry, too.
Yeah,
I think
but that's no longer the case. That's no longer the case.
Well, Jerry has a good point there, because our proven ethnic reserves in this country in the 30s were startling. And a lot of them have frankly just gone away entirely.
Well, we still got from Poland. We still get humor from Poland, and massive amounts of humor. I know in the last 5 years we've got
your black humor is just not a resource.
It was just cut off. I know, Henry, that we're all confronted now with the prospect really of conservation. Now, I just wonder if we could go around the table and ask some of our people here who have been involved in humor all their life what it's going to mean to them personally and what steps they are taking to conserve what humor they do have left. Doug, do you have any? What about your life? What about your day? How much humor were you used to consuming, and what efforts are you making to sort of pull back?
Well, I used to get off 4 or 5 Swifties a day usually. I'd wisecracks. I used to do a lot of wisecracks and sort of smart remarks and stuff. But I've cut back now. For one thing, I've converted most of my jokes to synthetic varieties. I've had great success with synthetic humor now. They have jokes that look funny and sound funny, and they're supposed to be funny, but they're really not funny. But they're almost funny.
Well, it's interesting, Doug. You're mentioning wisecracks, for instance, because of course the I mean, research is, we've known for a long time that a wisecrack will consume 40 to 50 times as much humor energy as a long, windy story. And yet, the long, windy story will take up as long or more time.
Absolutely.
Right.
So in other words, the first thing we can begin to do is to cut down on the wisecracks, the quick one-liners, and move into the long.
Too?
Oh, puns. Puns are, you use, do you know how quickly Americans used up puns? Do you know how few puns there are left? I think there may be, at this point, 2,000 or 3,000 original puns left.
Well, in connection with that, I'd like to say that it's probably a good idea, if you are going to tell the joke, to do it in one of the smaller rooms at the house. And to get, like if you have everyone in the family, say, in the living
here
room,
at the same time. Absolutely.
Make sure that the doors and windows are closed, because that way, the humor will last longer. You can draw it out for longer, because of course your one-liners too. I mean, I'm glad you pointed that out. They just fritter humor away.
The same mentality that allowed a guy to get in, an Oldsmobile Toronado, to drive 5 miles to the store to buy 1 pack of cigarettes. That's the mentality of the guy who goes around telling the same one-liner 5 or 6 times in a day to 5 or 6 different people. He could gather them together, tell it once.
This is where electronic media comes in, because when Jackie Mason tells a joke, or he tells it to millions of people.
Of course, that kills it for good, Mike. You realize that?
Well, it kills it for good, but I think it is reaching millions of people. If he's on primetime television, that's not, as far as I'm concerned, that's not a waste of energy. I mean, I think that's a...
Well, but then you have a large number of people who are unreachable to a certain joke.
You're always going to have them, Brian. You're going to have them in any society.
Yeah. What Ann was saying before, though, when you tell that joke in that small room, and whoever you elect to tell the joke to should be the people who you would assume would appreciate the joke, and not tell a joke to people. There might be 2 or 3 in that group that won't get the joke.
Oh, that's true.
This is again conserving.
Never tell a joke to an old person, for one thing.
No, I wouldn't limit it that. It's
most old
empathy
people, their mind gets fuzzy. It's stupid telling them jokes. Don't talk jokes to people who don't understand English. I mean, if you're saying in English, don't tell a Puerto Rican a joke. He just won't get the punchline. It's stupid and it's wasteful. I mean, I don't understand that. People in mental institutions.
Mike, actually, you have to realize, and I think the government is going to be stepping into this. We're going to have to develop a system of priorities. The first priority is probably going to have to be to our sick people in hospitals. We're going to have to cheer them up. The jokes are going to have to go there first. Now, that might also involve nursing homes and older people. I think they're definitely number 1 on the list, and it'll have to be a rationing system. Number 2 is probably our boys serving in the military. Military jokes. The military has a claim on our humor.
That's a very bleeding heart approach, Henry. I mean, if I can just interject my own opinion, I agree with Mike. I think jokes for the ones that are going to last.
Well, can I make a point here? I think it is more fun to laugh at old people than with old people. Okay? I think they provide more humor in those when they fall down the stairs and their little pathetic efforts to pick themselves up and favorite blankets and items of clothing. I mean, I find that
the problem is that like a lot of old people can't hear the humor anyway. I mean, their eardrums are like wet canvas. I mean, so it's sort of it's a real waste to even try it.
Well, no, I disagree with that. We have a number of our senior citizens who are quite responsive. Their physical age is not reflective of their energy.
But you can use the old jokes on those people. They want to hear the old jokes. They know the old jokes, and you can recycle.
But that doesn't matter. I mean, people are making a big fuss about this.
I have a question. It's related to actually who you tell the joke to, because I know that there's been talk about hoarding, and that hoarding is a bad idea. Now, if you think of a new joke, say in one day you might think of 5 or 6 new jokes. Well, should you tell those jokes immediately, or if you say them, would that be considered hoarding them if you don't tell them? I don't understand what the ethics would be on that.
Well, this will all have to be worked out by some kind of joke
answer that question?
Do you have an answer for that?
Now, I'll admit I hoarded some jokes, and now they're no good anymore. They
spoil.
I had some jokes about smoking bananas, getting ripped smoking bananas, and they were terrific at the time. Now, I originally got these jokes in 1966, I guess it was. I didn't use them. I held on to them. Today, no, they're not funny anymore. I mean, they're just, it's not a funny joke, smoking bananas, and they've turned to ashes in my hand. I mean, that's a lesson.
Let's get for a minute to the official side of what will be going on, because the government is going to be involved. And also, I just want to get the opinion of the people here on, I mean, there's a lot of talk now that we ought, for instance, to repeal the restrictions that have been put into effect in the last couple of years against laughing at women, for instance. Now, I mean, that's the source. Again, it's like the coal. I mean, we've got the source of energy. If we want to face the particulates, we can use the coal. And if we're willing to take the risks of laughing at women, we can get over, a lot of our humor gap. Now, Anne, why don't I go right to you? I mean, you'll be directly affected by this. Now, personally, would you rather see the United States continue to laugh at its normal level, close the humor gap at the expense of laughing at women all the time?
Well, that's a very hard question to answer, George. I don't know. I'd have to give that more thought, but I would hate to see us relax our standards, the standards that we've fought so hard.
Boob jokes.
If we can have boob jokes. Achieve.
There are some terrific the one about the women when they make a turn in the car and they have their hand out and really it's to dry their fingernails. I'd hate to see a joke like that, pass from common usage. Women driver jokes. I mean, we've got incredible.
No, I disagree with you because I think this is just the kind of thing we finally achieved a situation where some of those jokes are not in circulation anymore, not being used anymore, and we'll just be
they're stockpiled. They're
ready.
We could have. Let me just put it this way. Let me ask Henry. Henry, instead of having this forum right now, which has involved practically no humor, we could have gone right into our files, into our women joke files, and pulled out a lot of, let's put it on the line, offensive jokes.
Yes, and we could heat the city by burning garbage, too. But do you really think that's such a good idea?
Let me put it to Henry. Where is the Lampoon going to stand in the future on this? Are we going to fall back on women jokes?
Well, this is a serious question, George.
Never left it as far as I'm concerned.
We have hundreds and hundreds and thousands of potential JTUs of humor. That's
JTUs?
Joke thermal units. On women alone, we could cut them in right now. We wouldn't have to suffer the selective laugh outs that we're going to be having. I don't know. This is a moral question, I suppose, and it's one that I think, George, you're quite right. It's a direct analogy to the problem we're facing in the energy field, where we know that if we switch to some of these more smoky fuels, these things here, that people are going to be having difficulty breathing, and of course that would help us. If some of the older people died, we wouldn't have to waste jokes on them, but you can consider the problem is linked. I don't know, George. I think perhaps...
What about alternate sources of humor? If we don't go to the women jokes, where are we going to go?
That's the question. Now, this is where everybody's going to have to pitch in, and I'm not just talking now about the National Lampoon and people at the top here, people who are in the humor-producing field. I'm talking about the people around the country. They're going to have to get used to alternate sources of humor. Now, most people normally wouldn't have thought, let's say, that a wallet was funny. They're going to have to get used to the idea that wallets are funny. And every time we say wallet, they're going to have to laugh.
Powdered eggs is another one.
Powdered eggs, good example. Now, we could go back to some of these old tried and true things, like aardvark or no way, or sorry about that, cheap, but let's face it. They don't have that kind of humor potential. They're just not there. We're going to have to start some new things. Wallet is an example. There are many others. Ashtray.
Wax,
if you're going to laugh at it, we'll get some humor.
Wax water lilies.
Yes, belly button. Belly button.
No, that's pretty old.
Belly button is old.
That's in the old ones.
I think everybody's not really taking this quite as seriously as it should be taken.
I beg your pardon.
I was coming in today, I read in the Times that most people don't even know this, but the last known elephant joke, the last known elephant joke was told by Sally Peterson in Long Island, October 17th, I think it was 73, and it was the last one. After that, there aren't any more, and it gives you an example of what it was like, how it has petered out. It was, I think it was, as I remember, it was, how can you tell if an elephant is dying? And the answer was, well, it rolls around and twitches and trumpets in pain, and blood runs out of its trunk, and the vultures come and pick out its eyes.
We could have saved that one, Doug, but I think since you use it as an illumination.
And that's the last one. Now, Doug, can I answer that? Because there is and these are new. These are just coming into this now. Is the Polish elephant joke, which is how can you tell Dumbo is Polish by the hair under his ears? Now that is not particularly funny, but it combines, at least
How can you tell the elephant at a Polish wedding? It was the big gray one wearing.
Well, now it's probably time to get back to the official side of things. The whole debate of rationing, for instance, versus a tax increase. As we all know, President Nixon, who served on the Smile Board during World War II and testifies to the bureaucratic inefficiency of the Smile Board, is opposed to rationing. And now, are we, Henry, going to be faced with a humor tax of some kind? And is this going to make, for instance, humor absolutely inaccessible to the lower income groups in this? Is it only be the rich man, or are they going to be the only ones going to be allowed to laugh? That's the question.
It could happen, George. I mean, we may be faced with a situation.
$10 National Lampoon, $10 cover price, that kind of thing.
That's not a bad idea. It could happen, George. We may just have to ration humor on a need-to-laugh basis. There's a number of systems that have been proposed. The bureaucracy is a problem. We're aware of that. Coupons, there's a lot of cheating that could go on. But I think we just have to face up to the fact that we're going to be waking up one morning and we're just not going to have any humor left. Now, we can start right now making it possible, in the words of the president, what was it, to have everybody sacrifice a little so nobody had to suffer an awful lot.
Brian, what was your average humor consumption an average day?
You use a little bit more. No, a little bit more than the national average. So it was about 71, 72%. More than the national average, well, because of the nature of my business.
You know, we could go around and maybe everybody here could suggest one or two things that the average person at home might do to conserve humor right there.
Yeah. Okay,
that's the point.
I was very fond of consuming a great deal of liquor, and the following morning would get up, stumble about in my hangover and make hangover jokes and crash into things and find it very amusing and talk jokes about brain damage and all that sort of thing. I won't do that anymore. I will stay in bed. I will not get up.
That's a very good suggestion.
Very constructive. Yeah.
John, do you?
Special Canadian problem, I might add, because they're linked quite closely to us. Their economy is exactly the same. They have the same problem.
First of all, the area in which I feel that most humor is wasted is shtick. I think if we cut down on shtick, that we could probably conserve a fair amount of humor. There's also the question of resorting to irony. I think if we fell back on our vast untapped resources of irony and sarcasm, that we could probably get along. I don't see what I'm suggesting is that the shortage is in some ways hyped up.
Well, you must realize that the cost of extracting sarcasm from many situations has just put it out of the reach.
The only accessible bits of irony and sarcasm, I mean, ones that are going to be used by large numbers of people to achieve the kind of savings you're talking about. Things like so's your old man and pardon me for living. These are things that people aren't going to be satisfied with for very long.
Well, you know what? A very interesting example of how a lot of humor consumption has gotten out of hand, I think, is just to show what's happened to the hot foot. I mean, the classic hot foot, you got to usually a wooden match. A lot of people even use paper matches. And if the guy was sleeping, you'd stick the wooden match under the sole of his shoe, and you light it. And a couple minutes later, he's up dancing on one foot, screaming in pain. Like if you did that in a commuter car, you'd get 50 or 60 people laughing from one match. Now,
I hate to bring up.
If you realize, if you burn one wino, I mean, they use about 2-3 gallons of gasoline just for one. I mean, and there's usually 2 or 3 kids standing around. That and that just gives you an example.
Doug, I think I hate to bring politics into this discussion, but I think that what's happened is the reason that sarcasm and irony are out of the reach of the average man is that the politicians have practically a monopoly on cynicism, which is a prerequisite for your irony and your sarcasm.
Well, an ironic. Give me an ironic statement. See, I can't even. I mean, off the top of my.
There's one right there.
It's a very funny show.
Oh, that's.
I think that's cheap sarcasm, which is. I would distinguish between cheap sarcasm or synthetic irony.
We're going to be using a lot more of that cheap sarcasm in we'll be doing weeks to come.
Let's think of some solutions.
Now, well, there's one.
Practical jokes.
I mean, always leave them. We've always heard, always leave them laughing. Well, we can't do that anymore. Sometimes we just have to leave them smiling. Sometimes we just have to leave. I mean, you just leave, say good night. That's it. Goodbye.
Michael,
leave them pleasantly.
I think so.
Leave them pleasantly. Leave them with good manners.
A practical
don't be stupid, or just don't go out in some sort of a huff. Leave them. graciously.
Yeah.
There's another fallback area, by the way, leers and smirks. I mean, we may just have to look to put up with leers and smirks where we had been getting belly laughs.
And don't forget the Chuckly anecdote.
I think one thing we're overlooking, I mean, we're talking about trying to find new sources of humor. I think if we go back to the old sources of humor, for example,
The Bible.
well, the Bible is a good one, but I think tickling. I mean, people have been tickling each other for 6,000 to 7,000 years, and I think tickling went out of vogue in about the 50s, and they got into deep massage and this sort of thing, and tickling's really gone by the board.
Well,
And there's an untapped reservoir.
Also, there's the
For
natural
example,
twitch.
And here on my
And
right,
tick.
I mean, right now she's just sort of sitting there smoking a cigarette. But if I tickled her right now, I think you'd see a natural emission of laughter,
At
which
what
you wouldn't
cost?
get.
At
Just give
what
me a
cost?
demonstration. Now,
She will laugh again for a week.
Now this
That
is
energy,
that's a
that
wives'
energy.
tale. That's a wives' tale. Look,
It's not a wives' tale. That's the whole point of that.
No, I disagree with you because I think in order to
Tell a joke. Go ahead, Ed. Tell a joke.
I think you're right. I think
She can. I mean, she could have told a joke a minute ago. She had enough humor, energy built up. You tickle her, she laughs. That girl's not going to be funny again for a week. I promise you.
Look, this is an endless controversy.
I suppose the bats can get caught in your hair and never can be combed out.
Is that a joke? If that's a joke, if that's going to save the punchline.
Look, we've all agreed that we're not going to tell any jokes.
Yeah, let's
haven't we?
Listen, I have a practical thing I'd like to say here. This is something just to give you an example of what the average person can do to conserve humor. Now, take for example the trucks that are on the road, and Mr. Donahue and I have talked about this many times. On the backs of many trucks, you'll see a joke sign. Instead of saying "pass, don't pass," they'll say "passing side, suicide."
I call these truck yucks.
Yeah, truck yucks. Now, think of the amount of humor that could be saved if every trucker took those things off the truck.
Restrooms.
Restrooms. Funny stuff.
I mean, there's no.
This is the kind of thing we really should be talking about. These little practical things. For instance, in your daily transactions. I mean, when you go to the bank, that kind of thing. Just hold on to yourself. Don't say anything humorous to the teller. Just don't expend the humor energy in these tiny little transactions because that's where it goes. You don't realize it, but that's where it goes. Like in the little quips that you make with these.
And it's wasted too. Nobody's benefiting really from that.
Nobody is. No. And another thing is recycling, which you can definitely do, and everybody can do this in their own way. I mean, for instance, if you take like a Polish joke, say, well, there's a shortage of Polish jokes, but take an ethnic joke. Well, that ethnic joke can be recycled and adapted to different ethnic groups.
Now this is true because we used to make fun of black people at one time. Okay? We don't do that anymore. There are still groups. I think the Cuban community could provide a lot of amusement for us. Yeah, the way they dress, the way they move, some of the funny.
Delaware's funny.
The way the Cuban community tries to say the word Delaware is funny. They can't say it. They can't say the whole.
I think what we're getting into now is the fact that what we at the Lampoon Radio Hour are going to have to do is come up perhaps with more in-depth discussions of alternatives to traditional humor sources. And so you can expect from now on, instead of your usual 1, 2, 3 jokes, you're going to be getting a lot of discussions like this, and hopefully a few real important tips on how you can conserve humor at home. Summing up, I guess we could just say that the next 25 years aren't going to be very funny.